Hello everyone, it's Shane Conto, your Wasteland Reviewer, and welcome to the Wasteland, my weekly show where I take a deep dive into a particular film, and we're keeping on with some Steven Spielberg here, and unfortunately, I think we're hitting a bit of a roadblock or a bump in the road along the storied career of Steven Spielberg as we discuss 1941, and here to talk about it is Joe, part of the movie club, my friend for years, one of my groomsmen, and also his own YouTuber, who my first ever appearance on a YouTube channel was actually on his. So Joe, thanks for coming on.
Thank you, man. It's good to be here. And
now,
talk about 1941.
What a year. What a movie. But before we get into things, if you'd like to shamelessly plug anything, shamelessly plug away.
All right. So I did make a short reaction to Chip and Dale on my YouTube channel. I was planning on making a feature review for it, but that's still in the pipeline. Had a lot coming up this month, so I haven't quite gotten there, but I am posting more content on my YouTube channel, Joey T Cartoon P, spelled as it sounds, where you can find mostly film reviews, animation reviews. My particular subject format has always been primarily animation, but it doesn't every once in a while break away from just standard film talk and whatnot.
Well, we are going to talk about a live-action cartoon today, because I think that's the best way to describe this movie.
Apparently based on a real event, as we've discussed when we first watched it, which blows my mind.
And it's just like, well, she certainly didn't do it justice. But Joe here also was the one who created my thumbnail for my channel, and also will be creating another thumbnail for another project of mine that you all will be seeing eventually.
Yep.
Eventually. Because my friend Rowan and I have a lot of fun coming your way once we start rolling things out. But if you haven't watched Welcome to the Wasteland before or listened to the show, we have 3 segments. We have coming attractions, so we're going to be doing coming attractions for Friday, June 10th, 2022, and then we'll get into our feature film of the week, which is indeed 1941, which is a war movie comedy from Steven Spielberg, because that makes a lot of sense. And then we'll wrap the comedy loosely. And we'll be wrapping things up with some recommendations. But to get the big dinosaur-sized elephant out of the room first, obviously Jurassic World Dominion comes out this weekend, which is 2 hours and 30 minutes of movie that I am not looking forward to watching because basically Fallen Kingdom completely ruined my joy of this franchise. And now I'm just like, well, I'll watch it, because I watch everything. So I'll be seeing it. And not even Sam Neill, Laura Dern, and Jeff Goldblum are going to get me excited for this movie, because you know what you're doing, Universal, and it's not working.
Hey,
not working on me.
Studio that made Cat in the Hats. I mean, they were wonderful filmmaking decisions.
Now, Joe has a not so traditional coming attraction to talk about, because this film is out and about. Made $60 million for A24. It's the largest film yet. But Joe, what's coming out on VOD that everybody should go check out?
So tomorrow, Everywhere, Everything, All at Once. Yes, that's the title of the movie. A very wonderful movie I had the pleasure of watching a couple months ago that was exclusively in theaters is finally coming out tomorrow. On VOD, which I guess is also appropriate. I mean, I want to make like a 6-degree connection from what you were saying about Jurassic World and, you know, Steven Spielberg and Raiders of the and Indiana Jones and Short Round. Yeah, he's making his returns. You see what I did there?
I did see where you did
all that
there.
Connections there.
And it's funny because I'm trying to get a bunch of content ready for before I go on my honeymoon.
Yeah.
And I did indeed watch E.T., Raiders of the Lost Ark, and Temple of Doom on Saturday. So it was quite the Spielberg day on Saturday.
Oh, man. Hearing that list of films brings me back to when I was a kid, and there was the WB movie of the week on Saturdays and Sundays, or like Sunday mornings, and like you'd have like a string of Spielberg directed movies. Like hearing that lineup really brings me back to my childhood, man.
Childhood. Oh,
right in the feels.
while I was in COVID quarantine and couldn't do anything, at least I got some Spielberg. So, but I 100% reinforce what Joe's saying in terms of Everything Everywhere All at Once, which is presently my number 2 film of the year, right behind the Batman, because I love Batman. But Everything Everywhere All at Once is a marvel of cinema and what you can possibly do with movies. And especially compared to another multiverse film that came out this year that cost literally like 9 times, 10, 20, like 10 times the budget. Like, they do some amazing things.
Yeah, so not to mention too, I don't want to cut you off there, but like one thing that if you really want to make comparisons on multiverse movies, this smaller budget multiverse movie actually takes place in multiple universes, whereas that other film only took place in like
2, 3,
like 3 universes. That's it. Like, what's up with that, Marvel?
Very true. It was a self-contained story, and this movie goes wild.
It does.
Goes wild, and it's amazing for it. And the kind of person I am, I'm picking the Adam Sandler movie instead of Jurassic World, which I do have to say, I think the moment where Jurassic World franchise lost me was when a raptor rode a T-Rex into battle to fight a genetically engineered giant dinosaur, which then also died by getting RKO'd out of nowhere by a giant shark dinosaur. So, like,
you know, Adam Sandler is not going to make a joke about that in his upcoming movie.
Yeah, because
remember when we were watching Jurassic World and we saw the dinosaur and he was wearing the red sweater?
Which, the funny thing is, this is actually a serious Adam Sandler movie called Hustle, where he plays a washed-up NBA scout and trying to get this one young man that he meets in Spain onto the 76ers. Because Philly, y'all. So,
you know, you were mentioning the summary, and it's funny because, like, I don't know, do you remember a movie in the 90s called My Giant with Billy Crystal?
Yes.
In some ways, isn't that kind of the similar story in a way where he finds a giant? And I think he's Spanish too. He's from Spain too, so I guess it's like a role reversal. I guess not a role reversal. Maybe it's like an unintentional remake of My Giant. I don't know.
It's the same age-old story of George Lucas finding his giant in a hospital in England so that we can have Chewbacca. So there you go. Yeah, so I'm definitely like, I want to watch Hustle. And that actually comes out Wednesday the 8th. So this will be posting after Hustle's out already, which I'm still probably going to be watching on Friday. It'll probably be part of date night unless Jess doesn't want to watch it. Then I'll just watch it on Friday.
Yeah, and not to mention too, like there's from what I've seen and what I've heard about it, there is a lot of actual, you know, set location in Philadelphia. So it's always a joy when you get to see the city of brotherly love.
I want to see Adam Sandler interact with the Always Sunny guys.
Wouldn't you?
That needs to happen.
It seriously does. Like, I know we just went over Everything Everywhere All at Once, but like there was like a brief moment in the film. If anybody watches it, it's not a huge spoiler, but they may allude to like Always Sunny in a short way that, you know, anybody who watches it and catches it, hears it for like 1 second, they're like, yep, they know. They get it. They watch the show.
They know what they're doing here.
They know what they're doing.
But yeah, so basically, go watch Everything Everywhere All at Once. Go watch Hustle. I guess if you like dinosaurs, go watch Jurassic World Dominion.
I feel like we can make some wordplay out of that. We like, if you make the Hustle, you get Everything Everywhere All at Once. No?
And then just let Jurassic World die.
Screw it, and then screw up the analogy.
Yeah, there you go. But what we're really here to talk about this week is 1941, which is an hysterical Californians prepare for a Japanese invasion in the days after Pearl Harbor.
You read that off IMDb, right?
So for a second, I thought that they meant this. I was going to say this hysterical movie. I'm like, well, that's making some assumptions. But no, that's describing the crazed people of this California town, because basically what we have here is a mismatch of actual events that happened in the fallout of Pearl Harbor.
Yeah.
And they decided, what's the most respectful way to take care of one of the darkest times in American history is to make it a National Lampoon style, just complete and utter horny farce for an hour and 58 minutes.
Unnecessarily horny too, man.
And really, so Joe and I watched this along with some of my other groomsmen and friends on my bachelor party night, the night before my wedding, because this was such a great choice. And I know while we were watching it, we had the discussion of like, this really should be a Harold Ramis movie. And really, when it comes down to it, this should not be on my Spielberg list. This should be on a different list, because I don't think this was the best movie for him to direct. But we will get into some elements of his direction that I think actually really worked. But Joe, what interests you in coming on and talking about 1941?
Well, I wouldn't say it was so much because I, have a lot. I feel like a lot what you're going to say is a lot what I'm going to say about this film, and that I'm not the biggest fan of this film. Mm-hmm. I just felt maybe out of pity because I knew that no one else was going to do it.
That is true. I did indeed have a lot of problems trying to get somebody to come on and talk about this movie.
I think a lot of people didn't even know it existed.
That's very fair, and that's probably for the best.
I think a lot of people look at this the same way George Lucas looks at the Christmas special, the Star Wars Christmas special. It's like, it doesn't exist.
Do we? We do not want to talk about that. But so yeah, I can attest that specifically Joe had a lot of fun making fun of this movie while we were watching this movie.
Lots of middle fingers, a lot of swearing, a lot of frustration, and a lot of yelling. That probably constitutes my movie going experience. And this is the second time I've actually seen this movie. The first time I've watched this movie was back when I was I want to say 7 or 8, and it was on TV around Thanksgiving. But
and
I watched it
same flipping the bird, yelling obscenities as a child, watching it then as he did as we watched it like 2 weeks ago.
Honestly, the only two things I actually do, no joke, that I do remember about it watching as a kid was that an old guy watches Dumbo, which, I guess we're talking about things we might appreciate about, what Spielberg did, is that he knows the history when it comes to like specific film, and he loves Disney. So it was very smart for him to have Dumbo be the movie that a character watches in a theater, but it's a double-edged sword because there's a scene in the movie where a character is joyfully watching the Black Crow scene. I was like, if you really want to add insult to injury, have a character that shows up in blackface and whiteface in the movie that's showing a scene with the Black Crows. Like, there's a reason why a lot of people don't hear about this movie, is because cancel culture, forget about it. Get your hands on this, whether the intention there or not was to be, smart. No one's going to look at this today and be like, that's funny or that's insightful. They'll be like, what the hell are they doing?
They should have just showed the one scene that everybody could get behind, which is when Dumbo is effed up and sees a bunch of trippy-ass pink elephants.
Thank you.
So, like,
the one scene that everyone agrees on makes sense is when the character gets shit-faced. Excuse my language.
Yes. So, because, what a movie Dumbo is.
And it would actually make sense in context to the hysteria going on in this town when you see people like running through paint factories, and then you see like these giant pink elephants turning into like, paint splattered stuff, and then show the scene where the characters are running through a paint factory. That would have made sense.
100%. It would have made more sense too, because I'm pretty sure half the actors in this movie were shit-faced.
100%. I mean,
specifically John Belushi.
Yeah. Let's talk about
he had to be, right?
Yeah.
At this point.
Yeah.
Some things that I will say nice about this movie.
We got to give it day in court. We got to try.
Steven Spielberg is a great director. And there are some really interesting action moments with like the plane flying through downtown and stuff like that. I'm like, he knows how to shoot action. He really does. Yeah. He showed it in Duel. He showed it in Sugarland Express. Yeah. He showed it in Jaws. And then after this specifically, it's Indiana Jones. Can you imagine, like, he goes in and makes this movie and it's just like, well, that wasn't great, Steven. How are you going to fix this? Well, I'm going to make Raiders of the Lost Ark, E.T., and Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom in a row.
Yeah. And you know what, though? Like, you could see seeds of it in there. Like, on top of all my obscenities, on top of me cursing and screaming and getting pissed off at this movie, there were moments where I was like, wow, this is an expensive looking shot, because you're right, you're seeing miniature sets of these planes going through what is downtown Hollywood, and you're like, in a different movie, if this were a serious, and I think this is what they were trying to do, was they were trying to make a serious version.
Supposed to be a serious movie,
and
then somebody's bright idea was to make it not,
to make it make it like a Harold Ramis movie. Like, they were like, the one thing I told you, like, when watching this movie, I was like, this was the wrong director. This is the wrong script given to the wrong director. This belonged to someone like Harold Ramis. Lorne Michaels should have produced this and should have been a Saturday Night Live movie.
They were going to make this a joke. It should have been like a National Lampoon, Harold Ramis kind of thing.
Yeah, 100%.
This story is written by John Milius. And then the screenplay is written by Robert Zemeckis and Bob Gale before Robert Zemeckis started directing. And it's just like, wow. And because, everybody says that Zemeckis is Spielberg. Because, like, Back to the Future feels like it could have been a Spielberg movie. Yeah. Like, it has that kind of vibe, just super 80s. Because Huey Lewis in the News. But, like, you could tell Robert Zemeckis worked with Steven Spielberg and probably got some from him. And then this was pre Spielberg diving right into Lucasfilms right after this. But like, this is such an ill-advised film. And another thing that I appreciated, because there's two actors in this movie who are on a whole other level than everybody else. And then they even turned their whole storyline into a Benny Hill skit on a submarine, which is stupid.
Oh, no. You're talking about two classical actors, right?
So, like, you have Christopher Lee in this movie.
Yeah.
Playing a Nazi, submarine captain, which Captain Wolfgang von Kleinschmidt. And, like, Christopher Lee's an amazing actor. And then how the hell did Steven Spielberg get Toshiro Mifune to agree to be in this movie?
You have
I swear.
Yeah.
He thought that this was going to be a different movie. He probably pitched him, this is going to be a serious war movie, because Mifune is one of the greatest actors in the history of Japanese cinema. And all of those films that he did with Akira Kurosawa, and then he comes in and is in this turd. And
take that out of context. Imagine the cinematic samurai. That is that actor.
Yes.
Any cinematic samurai you can think of. Samurai Jack, if you love that show, it's complete homage to everything that actor does. And this is the American introduction to that actor, is a complete travesty. Basically, you have like one of the greatest representations of samurai cinema coming on screen with actors going, "Oh, Hollywood! Oh, Hollywood! Hollywood!" I'm not
literally. So
I'm not kidding you. That's a majority of what all the Japanese characters are screaming in half of the movie. It's Hollywood. Oh my God.
And you know this movie was going in the wrong direction when this starts off with the spoofing the intro to Jaws. And instead of a shark showing up, it's a Japanese submarine. And this young woman is hanging from the periscope naked.
I swear to God, I think when this was pitched, I think Spielberg knew that this was going to be a train wreck. He's like, please, people, remember I made that movie. I made that movie. In case you don't like this, go back and watch that movie, because I did make that movie. All right.
So, and just to kind of paint a picture with the rest of this cast, you have John Belushi. So, you know, when the top two billed people in your movie are John Belushi and Dan Aykroyd, this is going to be a joke. Like,
you're expecting someone to come out dancing. You're going to expect someone to sing the blues.
And Captain Wild Bill Kelso is John Belushi. And, like,
he commits a murder in his second scene in the movie, right? You want to talk about that?
He blows up this diner. Like, blows it up.
No, there are people still in that diner.
There are people
and there's
in that
fire,
building,
and there's debris blowing out, like in the scene in the Tarantino, George Clooney, Vampire from Dusk Till Dawn, like that gasoline blowing up, just like that.
100%. Then you have Dan Aykroyd. Ned Beatty's in it. Ned Beatty was a great actor, and like he also played some really silly roles, Superman. You have Murray Hamilton, the worst mayor in the history of cinema, fresh off of Jaws. You have Tim Matheson. Come on. You literally have the face of Animal House. And wait, was this before Animal House or after Animal House?
I'm almost positive this is after Animal House, because to me, this is
1 year after Animal House. So they just got a bunch of people from Animal House and rounded them up for this movie. You have Robert Stack, who I think was like an actual serious actor, but what I remember him from is being the one guy from Airplane.
I was just gonna say that, Captain Over.
Yeah. John Candy's in this. Eddie Deason, who plays Herbie, who's like, you might not recognize his name, but you know who he is when he pops up. And like Slim Pickens was in this. And we
need to talk about his scene coming up. That scene blows my mind. The logistics of how any movie scene really, really comes together. Okay, you talk about his character.
Well, like that, he's the one, like the crux of it that turns that whole entire because like the Japan. So for the most part, because you have the whole Hollywood thing going on with the Japanese characters, but like in general, there's more serious moments on that sub until Slim Pickens' character just like turns it into a Benny Hill skit. They might as well have put the Benny Hill music on. We're like
his scene is that they're trying to find their way into Hollywood, being inland. So they find a compass and a Cracker Jack box. And then Slim Pickens, he's this over-the-top, stereotypical cowboy, Southern hick guy. You ain't getting that. You ain't going in there, swallows the compass. And they're like, oh, we're going to get that. Guess how we're going to get that? You're going to shit it out. We're going to give you some fruit juice. Oh, no, you're not going to get me to shit this out. This is for my country. Okay? So there's a scene, right, where the man is being forced to shit. I'm not kidding you. The man is being forced to shit out a compass. And at one point, he convinces the Japanese that he has taken a pleasant dump so that they can get the compass. So the characters go into the bathroom, okay? And then they notice that, this 300-pound Southern hick dude is not in the bathroom. Where does he go? Where does this... Okay, he's got to be like 60-something years old, right? He's got to be 60-something years old. He's got to be 300 pounds and has the agility of a thumbtack. He Spider-Man's his way up a ceiling, okay? And then crab attacks these Japanese and ambushes his way out of a submarine. Okay? Does anything I just said right there make any goddamn fucking sense?
No,
no,
it does not.
But it fucking happened. A 300-pound, 65-year-old Southern hick ambushes a bunch of Japanese people after trying to get his shit. Literal shit, because there's a compass in it.
That was indeed a thing in this movie. Joe Flaherty's in this, aka "You'll miss this putt, you jackass." Guy from Happy Gilmore, and also the dad from Freaks and Geeks. And Michael McKean's in this too. And it's just like, there's so many people in this movie. Now, there one scene that frustrated me the most, where I'm just like, my God, who had a raging boner writing this movie? Is Tim Matheson is trying to hit on Nancy Allen from RoboCop. And she gets
I always forget that character's
on.
name too.
It's Donna Strafton.
Okay.
Strat. So
we were talking about that too. Like,
she's the one woman in this movie, and of course she's going to get sexually harassed out the wazoo by Tim Matheson, because Tim Matheson plays one character in the 70s, and it's horny dude who wants to sleep with any attractive woman. And there is non-stop double entendre, non-stop sexual references, dick jokes, everything. Like, they probably set a record for dick jokes within like a 5-minute time period on film. And so like very specifically about her character is she gets turned on by doing stuff in a plane.
Yeah.
And this turns into the dumbest slapstick scene, because it's like, oh, they're doing it. And of course, the stick for the plane is
bombs away.
Certainly a euphemism for his stick. And they keep moving it, and it flips people off the wing because they're trying to fill the wing or clean the wing. And it's like, whoop, 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 and just like falling off the plane. And then, of course, they bombs away, and you're just like, who the hell is watching this plane?
Yeah.
And
when that's our biggest concern out of a love scene, a funny love scene, that tells you that there's something wrong going on there. Because,
bonk, horny jail. This whole movie goes to horny jail.
Unfortunately.
I'm pretty, like, you could tell this movie was written by a bunch of young dudes.
Yeah.
Because, like, honestly, it felt like it was written by a 13-year-old boy hitting puberty who's just like, oh, I'm going to talk about boobs.
Oh, let's not forget the fact that there's another love triangle going on there with another character and then there's a fat girl who, like, fat, unattractive chick who falls for, like, one of the preppy soldier characters. But the whole joke is that she's a fat, unattractive chick, so she can't get with the handsome guy. I mean, screw that. That's funny, seeing the dysfunction going on there.
You know that your movie is outdated and sexist when Not Another Teen Movie makes fun of you. Because, like, Not Another Teen Movie, which is one of my podcast episodes with Rowan, has that whole entire joke where it's like, it's the taming of the shrew, and they need to, like, make the most loser girl in the school out to be attractive.
Yeah.
And, like, in every other movie, it's like, the joke is it's either they're fat or they're, like, slightly done up, less than done up to make them look like frumpy.
Yeah,
and the whole
designated ugly fat friend.
Well, and the three things that they make fun of in Not Another Teen Movie is Chris Evans like, you mean the girl with the glasses on and the overalls? and the paint stain on her overalls, and it's just like, see, like the joke he's making is funny because you know that's 100% what happens in every single one of these movies, and like this is all on display. It's like, but he can't possibly be attracted to this plus size young woman because she's fat, and just like, welcome to the 1970s movie.
And I mean, like I kind of get. I mean, it's all about context. I kind of get, because National Lampoon, I mean, that was the majority of what all those comedies came from. And it was, satirical college humor. That's what it was.
But this isn't a National Lampoon movie.
It's not, though.
It's a Spielberg movie. That's what doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah.
I'm just like, this, by every means, should be a National Lampoon film.
Yeah.
This 100% should be Hal Ramis.
Yeah.
Or, because
their end
John
credits.
Landis, specifically, who directed Animal House.
Yeah.
Like, that's who should be making this movie. And this just did not feel like Steven Spielberg's speed. Because one thing that I'll never accuse Steven Spielberg of is being like outwardly obnoxiously sexist in his movies, or like even mean-spirited. This movie is extremely mean-spirited.
And
it's just like, generally people make fun of his movies for being overly sentimental and nice.
Yeah, like there's a lot of like no-nos when it comes, and I mean, in another, comedic genius when it comes to parodying, because like what comedy is basically tragedy. It's someone's follies or someone's screw-ups made in a light where it's supposed to be funny. It's tragedy turned the other way around. Spielberg is dealing with like war and sex and race and drug. I mean, drugs, I guess, are kind of in the mix here too, in a certain degree, right? Like alcohol, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
A lot of lewd content. And to be honest with you, it's like he gets the joke and he wants to show that he gets the joke, but you can get a joke. It's about telling the joke. And it's like he figured, why don't I surround myself with really funny people and get really funny people that know what they're doing, really good screenwriters that know jokes and know this type. And as long as I just put them in there, they should be able to figure it out themselves. Unfortunately, without any clear direction, because that's the biggest problem that this movie has, is there's no clear direction. While I'm watching this movie, like it even speaks to how this, in some ways, how I feel like describing this movie is that it's a string of events with a very loose plot. It's a series of vignettes of characters doing something and then another character doing something else, all tied together with the Japanese trying to go to Hollywood, which even then is like so haphazardly done. There's no consistency. There's no rhyme or reason. Yeah. And as someone watching the movie, it's just frustrating to sit through and try to put the pieces together. It's like
this was a chore to sit through for 2 hours.
It is. And it really was.
And there's just too much going on. They're trying to tackle too much.
Yeah.
They're trying to focus on too many different events.
Yeah.
And like I'm looking up, Robert Zemeckis has one feature screenwriting credit before this, which was I Want to Hold Your Hand, which he wrote and directed the year before.
Okay.
Then he had Used Car, and then Back to the Future.
Yeah.
So like he went from this to one movie and then bam, Back to the Future. Like 6 years later.
Yeah, Lucas had American Graffiti before doing Star Wars.
So, American Graffiti is a good movie.
I was gonna say maybe what was the other one he did? IHX? Was it?
That is an interesting science fiction film that I think is too hardcore science fiction for most people.
Yeah.
Do I own it? I'm pretty sure that I own it. Yeah. So if George Lucas ever wins and winds up being my next director, go watch THX 1138.
Just looking at that DVD, looking at Blu-ray cover, it's like that looks like a Criterion Collection movie directed by George Lucas.
That's the thing. Like, I don't think George Lucas is the strongest director.
Yeah.
Because, like, to be fair, he directed only one movie in the original trilogy.
Yeah.
And it wasn't Empire. Erwin Kershner directed the best Star Wars movie.
Doesn't he only direct doesn't Lucas only direct 2 overall Star Wars movies?
Well, no, he directed the whole prequels.
Oh, he directed all of them. Oh.
The prequels were him having no limitations.
Yeah.
And it shows.
But at least Revenge of the Sith was good.
Yes, I think
I think that's the one legitimately good one.
Yes, and it has flaws. So, like, anytime Anakin and Padme interact with each other, but besides that,
if you ever want to describe, Revenge of the Sith, I feel like the best way to describe it is to take the line in the movie. It's the one movie where he's got the high ground. Can't really say that about the other 2.
No, but so that's 1941. Would not recommend. Honestly, I think if you are a cinephile and you're a completionist, and like I know a couple of my friends from Sith Pop are actually watching all these along with me.
Yeah.
Watching this is like completionist.
Oh, yeah.
Like you're curious because like I heard this was not a great movie, but I was always curious about it, and now I watched it and then like I'm dumbfounded. Like
I am too.
Spielberg movie, like
yeah.
How? But you know, it's just the wrong screenplay got into Spielberg's lap, and he did his best to try to do a pure comedy. And I just don't think it worked, because where it works best is when he's shooting action.
Yeah.
And we'll know for next week, talking about Raiders, which is a perfect action movie.
A combination of good action, good comedy, good drama, good love. I mean, it's got all the things you need in a good movie. One other thing I want to add when it comes to 1941 is that it's not, we're talking about Spielberg, it being, the wrong film for Spielberg. Given that what we know now, like, you look at tragic actors like John Belushi, right? And you look at what he could have been. It's like Chris Farley. You look at what promising career these actors could have had in their lives. Mm-hmm. That, to me, it's the biggest disappointment to see that this is how his legacy kind of ends. I mean, I want to hope and say that Blues Brothers came after 1941. Okay, so at least he had that going for him. But I mean, still, look, with that said, it's unfortunate that you have to say, like, you're going off of Animal House, Blues Brothers, Saturday Night Live performances, and then 1941.
This turd in between.
This turd in between. It's a shame. It really is, because he's like Jim Carrey. He was an actor that put in 120% into his performance, and you could even see that here. Jokes don't work. That they don't work, but he had so much passion and so much energy to making people laugh. Like, I remember interviews where people said that, like, John Belushi was the type of person that would not give up until you smiled. And to me, that is an aspect of comedians that really makes me appreciate the art of comedy, right? Yeah. Is when someone will go out of their way and pretty much struggle for their art, and you could see that in any performance he does. It's just a shame that it's this turd.
Yeah, because Animal House, the amount of laughs and smiles he gets out of me in that movie alone, like
hey, guess what? I'm a zit. Get it?
And then did we give up when the Germans bombed Pearl Harbor? The Germans, he's on a roll.
Hey, he's going to be in 1941. That's him preparing for his role.
Well, I would like to think that that's an inside joke on why he did this movie. But
the only other explanation, to be honest.
Our final segment today, some recommendations, and I know Joe has 2 and I have 2. So, Joe, what movie did you want to recommend to the lovely folks listening?
So, it's funny because when you ask me, what do I recommend? And sometimes, you don't just want to say, like, oh, I enjoyed this and I think someone else. You think about, like, what is something that other people will enjoy that I didn't just enjoy? And to be honest with you, watching Top Gun for your before your bachelor party was not only just a good experience because, hey, you were getting married that day. The movie surprised me with how much substance it had. I was not the
100%.
biggest fan of Top Gun growing up. If anything, I looked at it the same way most cinephiles look at it. It was like, oh, it's an analogy for being gay in the 1980s, Tom Cruise trying to hold on to his sexuality and whatnot, right?
Homoeroticism, America, and 80s cheese.
And volleyball.
Yep.
Replaced with football now in a very tasteful, 2020.
Was that Pharrell? Was that Pharrell Williams they were playing during that scene?
I wouldn't remember.
Because, yeah, they did not play Playing with the Boys, so they did not play Kenny Loggins during that scene, which is probably for the best.
Probably. I think they had the cover of Danger Zone, which was good enough. I mean, there was a joke we ran with each other where it's literally about running, where we were trying to count how many scenes where Tom Cruise is going to awkwardly run and ride a motorcycle.
Or drive a motorcycle. And 7 times. 7 times in Top Gun Maverick, he either runs or drives a motorcycle.
And it's glorious.
There you go.
It's glorious.
My brother Ethan picked the under, and he was not happy because he's like, him running on a treadmill doesn't count. I'm like, sure does. He was running.
Hey, listen, I've watched the Mission Impossible films. I'm never going under with the man. He's
Oh.
Did you know in one interview, when someone asked him about his stunts, his response was, did you ever question why Gene Kelly would do big dance numbers? He would do it because he loved to dance. Does that analogy make sense to you?
Well, I heard a very interesting commentary from the cinephiles that if Gene Kelly was acting today, he would be an action movie star.
I believe it.
Because he would be able to do all those stunts.
Oh, yeah.
And stuff like that. And I think that's a very interesting analogy because, like, back then, Gene Kelly was the most physical, committed actor around, and nobody taking that crown from Tom Cruise.
Yeah. I'm just surprised he didn't say Buster Keaton because I feel like Tom Cruise is kind of trying to be the modern day Buster Keaton.
Well, and I think that works too.
Yeah.
I think that's a really good analogy too because Buster Keaton did all those stunts too.
Yeah, I remember I was watching The General, which very interesting context. It's a movie that, I mean, we could go into that in a whole nother discussion.
It's like it's from a perspective like a Confederate soldier and stuff like that.
Exactly. But the point being, he literally had a group of people like watch him take a train and crash a train down a ravine. Like it was like a big event.
And it was still there for decades.
Yeah. Like
back in the day, we didn't have CGI. Let's yeet a real train off of a
or the fact that he almost cuts himself in half, down the middle, going on top of this girder, the grill to put down these tracks. Like that's crazy. But you look at Tom Cruise, scaling the friggin' building in Dubai. You could see that that's what he's trying to go for, as far as thrills. And I mean, you could say that happens a lot in Top Gun in a sense that there is a lot of practicality to it.
And those jets, legitimately flying them.
Yeah,
like he's not allowed to touch into guns or anything. Yeah. But like he legit had them all learn how to fly.
Yeah, and the stunts that they were doing in those jets were not easy stunts at all. And listen, it shows, and it the money is on the screen, in a sense that you actually really appreciate it, and it reminds you of a day when blockbuster movies didn't just feel like a comic book and didn't feel like a Marvel movie. Listen, I'm coming out wearing my Venom shirt, but every once in a while you kind of just want to get something different, and this is that type of movie that brings you back to what an old school blockbuster feels like. And I think it's something that we're kind of craving. It's making money.
Tom Cruise fills that with a Mission Impossible. I wish Edge of Tomorrow made more money because that movie's amazing.
Oh yeah,
but
not the same director, not Joe Kosinski. I think that was Born Identity director, right?
Doug Liman.
Doug Liman.
This was Joseph Kosinski, who did Oblivion and Tron Legacy.
I think he's in the short running to direct the new Fantastic Four.
I've heard some interesting things. I heard Jon Favreau first, and I'm like, that makes tons of sense. Would be an easy pick. Yeah. But does he have the time with all the Star Wars stuff he's doing? I've recently started hearing rumors Bryce Dallas Howard could star and direct it.
Hey, if she could be the Invisible Girl.
Yep.
And
she's doing great stuff with the Star Wars episodes that she's directing. Yeah. So I'd be down for that. But like if they got Joseph Kosinski to direct Fantastic Four, I'd be happy. Because between like nobody's gonna say Tron Legacy was an amazingly written film.
No.
But boy, did he direct the hell out of that movie.
It was visually a great looking movie, and
the action was amazing.
Its only problem, and I hate saying that this is its only problem is that it's a Tron sequel. You know, it's a lot like Dumbo, directed by Tim Burton, where it's like, this is a great movie. That's only problem is that it's in connection to something that actually makes it worse in a way.
It's a Dumbo movie. And then Oblivion is an extremely derivative film, like from a writing standpoint. But like, my God, he directs the hell out of it. So like, I wasn't surprised about that.
It was good to see him get some redemption. And I think we mentioned it to our, when we finished, it was like, wait a minute, this is his second sequel to an 80s pop culture,
and
a big deal.
This time. Now, what was the show that you wanted to recommend?
Okay, so there was a off-Broadway, I guess Broadway is considered Broadway now, show called The Play That Goes Wrong, and it sounds exactly what it sounds like. So from the set direction, the blocking, the acting, and the overall execution is done intentionally wrong, and it leads to some of the greatest slapstick ever. They have a TV show on the BBC that's showing on on an app called Broadway TV. You could also find the first season on YouTube for free. I've been binge watching that, where basically every episode is a new play of the week, and they vary from different scenarios. Like, for example, one episode, the characters misinterpret the title 90 degrees with the weather, but it turns out that they actually build sets that are 90 degrees off of what they should be. So you have characters that are acting on their sides, but they position the camera so that it looks like it's being shot regular. And it's like, it's such, I actually showed my dad a bit in there that reminded him of the Pink Panther, where characters are talking with a thick American accent, and it was kind of like the Mickey scene in one of the Pink Panther movies, and he was on the floor laughing. I think it's if you love old school classic slapstick, it's great to see that being brought back, because it's hard when, and I think this is the problem that most slapstick runs into was when you do everything right. You only see a man fall on a banana peel so many times where it becomes derivative, right?
Yeah.
You have to do something different, because this is live and they have the technology so that a live performance can look like a Mel Brooks movie. It gives you something that you're not getting now, because you hear in real time people actually reacting to people almost kill themselves with the type of slapstick that you're doing. It's freaking hilarious. And I mean, hate going back to another thing I was saying before, but I mean, it's kind of like what works about Everything Everywhere All at Once is, I mean, I want to ask you, is that some of the best slapstick you've seen in a while?
Oh, it's like somebody watched a Jackie Chan movie and was just like, this is how you do slapstick today.
Yeah.
And like, you use the martial arts to it.
Yeah.
And get a lot of laughs out of some amazing action.
Yeah, I mean, you can fight, but it's all about reaction. It's all about what you're doing. And I mean, if you could, get an action scene to say, but do it in a sense where someone's, doing something hilarious, it's friggin' hilarious.
Absolutely hilarious. It's like Kung Fu Panda, which means something to me because that was the first ever video I record, YouTube
Kung Fu
video I
Panda 3.
recorded.
I love the
you.
connection there. 6 degrees
is,
all around. We're coming full circle.
Finding the fun in the action. And if you could do that, because like that's what slapstick is, it's action.
Yep.
It's their action sequences. It's just a matter of you're trying to get laughs instead of thrills, kind of thing. But if you do it right, you get both. And Everything Everywhere All at Once does that.
And if you do it wrong, you get 1941.
Yeah. Now, my two recommendations, one was George Carlin's American Dream.
Oh.
Which is the new HBO documentary, which is like 3.5 hours long. Over 3.5 hours long. But it is a great look into the life and career of George Carlin. And it's directed by Judd Apatow.
Okay.
Which this is the best thing he's done in years. Like
including the King of Staten Island.
I think this is better than the King of Staten
Island. Okay. That's a glowing review then.
This captures George Carlin. The last two scenes of this movie, one of them hits on his legacy as like a prophetic figure of the world that we live in. And it's edited to perfection. That really shows how prophetic all of his bits were.
Yeah.
And it was scary good.
Yeah.
And then it's very emotional final scene in terms of, because they have both George Carlin's brother and his daughter a part of this documentary. His brother's hilarious. And his daughter because like this film does not pull punches. It does not shy away from the fact that like he was a coke addict, like a really bad addict. And in many ways, his marriage was very toxic. Yeah. And like it doesn't shy away from that. His daughter talks very frankly about it. But like this film,
isn't it true though? Like, you know, George Carlin's career picked up at a point when like everything was going to shit in his life. Where like it's kind of like the movie Network, where a guy goes crazy and everyone just sees how insane life is going.
Yeah. I'm mad as hell, and I'm not going to take it anymore. And then the other one that I watched was Shadow of a Doubt, which I'll be recording for my podcast with Rowan, which is a Hitchcock film starring Joseph Cotton. And it's about a young girl who's so excited when her uncle comes to town. Her uncle might be a serial killer. My biggest attraction from this movie is that it is so obvious. Like there feels like there's no mystery to this movie. It's just like, well, duh, he is.
Did it come out before Rear Window or after Rear Window?
Before, because this is 48 or like I think you're earlier than that. This might have been like 44 or something like that. This was the #1 film of that year, according to like when I looked up movies that came out that year. Like this was like the top movie, Shadow of a Doubt, and it's funny. It has some great moments. The father of the family is actually Clarence from It's a Wonderful Life, the angel, and like that actor has some fun moments. But it's not my favorite Hitchcock, but I think it's a good film. And it's like I rent it on Amazon. It's a couple dollars.
Not to mention too, like, you know, we look at it now in a sense and say that this is a twist we all see coming a mile away. But the beauty of what, you know, watching Vertigo with you a couple of years ago.
Still one of my favorite theater going experiences.
Yeah. And I mean, listen, the story is predictable in a sense where you could see where it's going. It's about the execution. And Hitchcock, he's a classic filmmaker because it's all about execution. Yeah. I love the way he puts scenes together. Like he crafts a story where you know what's going to happen by page 10, but it's the journey. And to me, that is what defines a great movie, is if you enjoy the journey, no matter what the ending is, no matter if the butler did it, everyone knows the butler did it.
He did it.
You want to find out how the butler did it. That's what matters.
So just to clarify, so Hitchcock's first feature film came out in 1925.
Wow. Silent movie?
Huh?
Was it a silent film?
I believe so. It's called The Pleasure Garden. I just watched as well Champagne, which came out in 1928, which was also a silent film. Okay. This came out, Shadow of a Doubt came out in 1943.
Yeah.
So like he had The Lady Vanishes that came out in 38, The Foreign Correspondent in 40, Mr. and Mrs. Smith 1941, Suspicion in 41, Saboteur 42, Shadow of a Doubt 43. And then after that, like Notorious came out in 1946, where I think that was one of his first like big ones, and then like Rope in 40.
It's a very big movie because they actually got him a time machine to go into the present to get Notorious B.I.G. to be in his movie with him. I mean, you gotta look at that and appreciate, the studio for shilling out the money to do that.
He actually, Biggie didn't die. He just went back in time with Alfred Hitchcock, apparently.
Do you remember when we were watching Top Gun and we mentioned Kenny Loggins doing Caddyshack and doing the end song, the I'm All Right, and then I told you, I was like, what was it like for Kenny Loggins to get inside that gopher suit to do that dance? Just to see how you react to that, and you're like, no, I'm changing the subject, Joe. I'm not entertaining this.
So those are a couple recommendations for you from both of us. And that's a wrap here on Welcome to the Wasteland this week. Tune in next week where my buddy Adam from Down Under comes on, and we're going to be talking about Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Oh my gosh, that's going to be great.
And then the week after, Jess, my wife, will be talking about E.T. with me and how much she was terrified by E.T. Specifically E.T. and his shrivelly leather-looking body.
Even though they intentionally tried to get all the cutest animals and cutest things to come up with that design. That was the story behind that. Is we're going to try to take every cute thing and put it into something. I was like, oh, okay.
They failed. But Joe, thank you for coming on.
It's always a pleasure, man.
And thank you for always tuning in and supporting your Wasteland Reviewer.